is to turn you until you are sold. In walking this ride and running the ground where we know every light's gone dim in the light of this sin. Am I breathing right? Am I breathing right?
Okay, so today we're going to talk about Aaron Sprinkle. Now, Aaron is a absolutely central figure in the history of Tooth and Nail Records. He's probably the single individual that's had the most influence on what Tooth and Nail sounds like. But it's not just the bands that Aaron Sprinkle was in, it's the bands that he's produced that have made him an absolute legend. And it's absurd to try to list them all, so I'll just list a few. Poor Old Lou, MXPX, Blenderhead, Sometimes Sunday, Squad 5-0, Stave Saker, Pedro the Lion, Joy Electric, Slick Shoes, Project 86, 1,000 Foot Crutch, Starflyer 59, Anne Berlin, Demon Hunter, Cutlass, Jeremy Camp, Dead Poetic, Hawk Nelson, Emery, KJ52, The Almost, Copeland, Ivory Line, Jonesetta, and just so many more. In fact, over 100 more. And there's also a giant list of prominent bands that aren't on Tooth and Nail that he's done as well. So you get the picture. Aaron Sprinkle is the man. Now, in addition to Aaron being so influential to Tooth and Nail and all these people that we've just mentioned, he's also one of my best friends in the world. And I can't think of anybody that's had a bigger influence on me musically, professionally, and personally. As far as Emery goes, he's worked on almost every recorded song that Emery has in some capacity. And then I've had the privilege of learning everything I know about engineering, music recording, and producing from him because I got to work with him for several years as his engineer. So that makes this episode a little bit different. Instead of talking to other people about Aaron and playing clips and doing all that, we thought it'd be really interesting to just sit down and talk to Aaron Sprinkle himself and let you get to know him a little bit in the way that we know him, in a little bit more of a long-form conversation. So there's a couple things that we really wanted to cover. One of them is, how did Aaron Sprinkle get and create the opportunity to do all these records? How did the relationship with him and Brandon and Tooth and Nail unfold? And the other thing we're going to talk about is some personal struggles and stuff that Aaron has had. And a lot of stuff we talked about in this episode he's never talked about before, or at least publicly. So we count it a privilege that he's comfortable enough around us to sit and talk about things and allow us to share it with you guys. So what you're going to hear is mostly an uncut conversation that we had with Aaron, who came over to Toby's house in Nashville and we sat at his kitchen table. And I thought that would be a good way to let you guys get to know the Aaron Sprinkle that we know and love so much. Here's Aaron Sprinkle.
I'm the one who can't believe in nothing unless it's right in front of me, right in front of me. You jumped the gun and you underestimated who you were supposed to be. You were supposed to be,
When I was a little kid, we lived on the beach, and there was basically like this shared giant front lawn right up against the beach of all these houses. And there was this kid walking down, and I kind of knew him. He was older, and he had a Walkman. And I was like, what is that? I was like so like fascinated by this Walkman. And he's like, basically, get out of here, you little idiot. So I kind of stalked him and waited for him to go into his grandparents' house where he was staying at the end of the beach. And then I went and asked them if I could listen to it, because they were really nice to me. So, and I was so excited. I remember it was the kind that had like the thin metal thing and the little things, and it was like real small and metal, and it was so cool. Grandma sat me down at the table, and she just grabbed a tape, threw it in, hit play, and it was Sgt. Pepper's.
85 or something?
No, 82.
82. Oh,
83, man. Something like that. And Sgt. Pepper's Lovely Rita comes on, and that's the most life-changing moment I've ever had in my entire life. Like, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. That feeling I got there is what I'm still chasing every time.
Was it the first time you heard the Beatles? Or the first time
Maybe.
you had
I mean, I'm sure I'd
like
heard, Twist and Shout or something like that. That's when I started noticing the way things sounded and the way things made you feel because of the way they sounded.
All right, so let's talk about how you got the gig being the producer at Tooth and Nail. How did you, what did you apply in the classified ads for help wanted, producer needed to change the face of Christian punk music in the next decade, something like that?
Okay, so I'm just going to do this and try to keep it kind of concise, but it's kind of a lot, and then you just edit out what you want.
That's fine.
Thanks for the disclaimer.
Yeah. So
Quit trying to produce this podcast.
Yeah.
I met Brandon. Apparently, I met Brandon in Oregon in the early '90s. I don't remember it, but he does. He was playing. Poor Old Lou, my band in the '90s, had a tape out that we put out ourselves, and he was playing it on his radio show. He was a big fan. We were doing our thing, and then through this other guy who was a huge influence on me as a producer, just probably the most, this guy named Terry Taylor. He ended up getting our tape. By the time he got our tape and took it to this label in Newport Beach called Frontline Records, by the time he did that, Brandon happened to be working at Frontline Records. He was like, maybe, I forget, doing radio promotion or something like that. Anyway, so he was already trying to get them to sign us, and then this guy, Terry Taylor, came in, who was a producer, and he was signed to the label, and he would kind of like bring bands in. So that's when Brandon and I really met. That I remember meeting him. I remember actually staying at his house or his apartment down there somewhere in Newport Beach area. Summer of '93, this would be. I remember sitting in his hot tub at night at the apartment building in California, and him saying to me, "What do you think about the name Tooth and Nail Records?"
Wow.
And I was like, "What? That is so weird." And he was like, I think his grandma used to say that, you're going to fight me tooth and nail or something like that. So that was where I came up with the idea. Fast forward, I don't remember how much time it was. Fast forward, Poor Lou is playing a show in Bremerton. Magnified Plaid guys were there. One of the bands cancels. They call and they're like, we broke down or whatever. And so they were like, hey, can we play? And so they played.
In the days where you could just hop on shows that doesn't exist anymore, but used to exist.
Yeah, and the show was in Bremerton too,
Yeah.
and their practice space was like 2 blocks from it or something crazy like that. They just went and got their gear.
And they
in
were
2
unknown
seconds.
at the time.
They were kind of known there a little
Local.
bit. I'd never seen them, and I just couldn't believe what I was watching when I saw them play. I was just floored. So I've got this other side story where I had been basically given the keys to this recording studio in my church, which was an old high school in Wallingford, in Seattle, and to just figure out and learn and kind of take my recording to the next level. So I said to MXPX, I said, hey, my friend is starting this label. He's awesome. I will record 3 songs for you for free. All I ask is that I let him hear them first. After that, you can do whatever you want with them. I don't know where I even got kind of this idea. I don't remember. So I did that, and obviously Tooth and Nail signed MXPX, and Brandon was like, hey, do you want to do the record? And I was like, yes. And he's like, okay, we're going to do it at this studio called Avast in Wallingford.
That's crazy. So you went from home recording to getting to play around in a studio at a
Yeah.
church to getting an offer to do
A record at
a
Avast.
new band
Yep.
that was signed at a real studio.
At an awesome studio.
Yeah.
And I totally lied to Brandon. He's like, do you know how to use all this stuff in there? And I was like, oh, totally. And I was like,
All you got to do is say, I know more than you.
Yeah.
And then you're
Yeah.
good.
A girl that knows, a girl that likes to wear my clothes, someone who always finds me close, a girl that's on my jokes. That's a girl that I want to see fall in with me. That's a girl that I long to know. Oh, how I love her so.
so I did that, and then I also did Blenderhead. I actually think I did Blenderhead before I actually ended up recording MXPX. I did Blenderhead's first record. And then I did this band Don't Know that I'd recorded in the studio at the church, and then I did their full length as well. And then the last thing I really worked on was this band Sometimes Sunday. And then I did a bunch of stuff for just all these local bands. I really dug in and just tried to make a go of this thing, being a producer. Because even when I was doing those first records, I still was kind of the mindset that I'm in a band. That's my job.
Uh-huh.
But on the side, I have this hobby where I produce
You
records.
thought of Poor Old Lou as primary. At that
Yeah,
time.
because that my kid dream was to be a rock star. And so then I kind of realized, actually, I've never made any money from this band, and I've actually been able to pay some bills making these records. So then that kind of switched to focus. I got married super young, had a kid. We got pregnant within the first year of being married. And then I got totally burnt out. I had been working on like a solo thing I was trying to do, and I had another band that broke up from some crazy personal stuff that happened with that. And I was working with this band that I was friends with in Seattle, and they were like, I was kind of complaining about how burnt out I was. And they're like, dude, you should like come work where we work. Because I had graphic design background too. It was the only other thing I'd ever really done. And so they got me this job at this software publisher called Sierra Online. I did video game publishing, and I did pre-press and then eventually graphic design there for a year and a half or so. During that time, I had gone through this really crazy thing where I had not only come to terms with the fact that I wasn't going to do music ever again. I wasn't going to produce another record ever again. But I was totally fine with it and, like, pretty stoked about it. I had a job. I was getting a paycheck. I was working a regular amount of hours. Karina and I had talked about, like, well, that was, cool, but I have, like, this job where I actually have, like, a track happening to progress and make more money. And so one night, Karina, my wife, goes to a show at the Paradox on the Ave, and Bill maybe is there. And I think it was Bill. And Bill's like, Brandon's building a studio in the basement of the new Tooth and Nail offices. And Karina was like, well, that's crazy. And then, and he's like looking for someone to like run it or whatever. So the next day at work, Karina calls me and goes, hey, Brandon is building a studio and he's looking for someone to run it. And I was like, why are you telling me this? Like, we just decided I'm not. See, I seriously remember kind of feeling mad at her for telling me that. So this is for real. What I'm about to tell you is not a joke, okay? This is where it gets insane. I ended up calling Brandon just to kind of say, hey, I heard you did. And he's like, yeah, we're doing it. It's cool. It's crazy. Cool, man. Good to hear from you. So then I go home, and I talk to Karina, and I finally, after a few days, I tell her, I have this weird feeling that everything we've been talking about is wrong, and I'm supposed to go do this. And she goes, me too. And I was like, oh, no. Because you just think you got it figured out, right? Yeah. And then it's just curveball. So I call Brandon and basically kind of tell him how I'm feeling. And he's like, no, you're not the guy. And I was like so devastated. I was like, what do you mean? He goes, well, dude, you got a kid, you got a wife, you're making, a decent living right now. I don't know if I can be responsible for that. Like, I don't know if I can guarantee you're going to get enough work to equally make the amount of money you're making right now. He's like, plus I haven't really heard anything you've done in a couple of years. He said that. Like, I don't know what you're doing. Yeah. So he's like, I'm kind of looking for like a single guy that has a rent at an apartment, and that's his bill, So I got off the phone, and then the feeling turned into, I'm actually going to just quit my job and basically show up at Tooth and Nail and just say, I actually work here now, Brandon. And I did that. So it's really crazy, but I really did that.
I never heard
what I
this.
said to him was, "Hey, I'm trying to finish this." So I was trying to finish this solo record that this label kind of talked me into making, and it'd been taking me forever because I was working full time, kind of trying to record it at home. So I was like, "Hey, let me just use your studio to finish this solo record, and that way you can kind of hear what I'm doing." But this is where I work now.
Yeah.
I quit my job. I told him I quit my job. I just turned. So 2 weeks after that, every single person I worked with got laid off.
No way.
Yep. Every single one of them, including my boss. So that was crazy. And then, I did like what was that band? Calibretto 13. Mm-hmm. I did like a record with them. It was like the first thing he let me do. And then he started doing this thing where he would have me record like 3 songs of a band he was thinking about signing, and one of them was Cutlass. Wow. And then I just did the Cutlass record. So it just went, and then Anne Berlin, and then Acceptance was like, will you do this EP because we're trying to get signed. And within, a year, it was like Jeremy Camp, and I mean, it was crazy, all this stuff. 2 years, I guess, I was doing Jeremy Camp. So I never had any idea that it would be what it became.
What was the first biggest record?
Cutlass.
Staring at a blank wall and it's whitewashed.
flushed face, not knowing why I had to choose this way. I discern I was wrong in my way, looking for peace in another domain. I realize that it's true, and I seek you. Whoa. I realize that it's true, I need you. And I reach out and I touch you.
But
Yeah.
it got bigger than you thought it would.
Oh, yeah.
Than anybody, I imagine, thought it would.
And Amberlin. We kind of had an idea that Amberlin would do well
Yeah.
because they were, Brandon was so excited. And that was even kind of a big deal that I got to do that record.
That was when it became pretty
Because
lot
they
that
were
you
kind of like, they were like, they saw a lot of potential in them.
Yeah.
So,
And so at that point, you were getting real records from whoever, and probably other people outside of Tooth and Nail, and you were doing stuff that wasn't just Christian stuff too. So at that point,
yeah, and it's funny too because I remember, so up till 98, 99, I'd produced a bunch of stuff, and I had never had someone else mix anything I'd ever done. And it was like, why would you?
just thought it was part
it
of
was just
recording,
never
basically.
even like an option, right? So I signed as solo deal to this label called Organic that was an imprint of Pamplin in Oregon. And they called me and they're like, is your record almost done? I was like, yeah. And they're like, cool, we want you to come out to Tennessee to our studio, the Sound Kitchen, and our buddy JR is going to mix your record. And I was like, no, he's not. What are you talking about? That's insane. This guy is going to mix my record in Nashville? I was totally offended and like so upset. So it was Dino Elefante, and he was like, look, we're going to pay for all of it. You come out, meet JR, let him mix one song, and if you don't like it, you can leave. So then I was just like super bummed. I was like, so I basically get to think about the fact that I'm going to have to meet some guy and then fire him a few hours later for the next
Even worse, yeah.
2 weeks.
Because you were sure.
Yeah.
100%. 100%. So we go out there and I meet JR and I liked him as a person. I was like, oh, that's weird. This
is gonna be hard to
I
find.
I found out like he was from California, so I was like, oh, he's a West Coast dude. And then he was like really into the Beatles, like even knew way more about him than I did. And I was like, oh, that's cool. But I was like, dang it, this is gonna suck. And the studio was crazy. I've never been in a studio like that. And so he mixes, it was the first song on the album called Solace, and he mixes it, and I go in, I sit down at this huge SSL. I mean, the studio was so crazy. And I hit play, and I just have never been that humbled in my entire life. I mean, I couldn't believe how much he got what I was doing. Totally got it. The panning, the treatment of everything, and then also how much 1,000% better it was than anything I possibly could have done at the time.
Yeah.
Just so far
I think that's part of the magic combination is that you and JR together.
So when Cutlass happened, I was like, hey, Brandon, check this out. We're going to bring in my buddy JR to mix this. And he's like, I don't know, because he'd never heard of him or worked with him. And that was huge.
Yeah.
I mean, that was insane that happened.
Yeah.
Because, like, that took what I was doing, what Tooth and Nail was doing, everything to just this whole other level. The JR Sprinkle combo just, was like a kind of crazy thing that happened for a while there. Because I could just totally think about making this thing that I knew exactly what he was going to do with. And it would just come out exactly how we both knew it would every time. So I think that's cool.
It kind of became the sound of Tooth and Nail.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it really did.
Yeah,
It kinda-
there's literally like a Gear Sluts page about me and JR
Really?
records. Yeah, it's really funny. Like,
I think that's very funny about the story of you just showing up at Tooth and Nail. And I hadn't heard that story before, but if you'll remember, that's how I started working at the compound with you. I just brought my stuff in while we were doing the Emery record. And I said, why don't I just bring my computer and monitor into the side room in the lounge? And I set it up in the lounge. And then
Never left.
And then that was it. I never left. I just left it set up, and I had a job there after that. I just took my stuff down there and said,
That's
I work
true.
here now.
That's amazing.
By the time we got done with the Emery record, you were like, so-and-so's coming in. Do you want to edit? Because I was just doing editing and feeding you the tracks that I was just tracking myself. The stuff that you didn't want to do.
Yeah.
And then you're like, well, the next band's coming in. You just want to track them too. I was like, yep, here we go. That was it.
That's awesome.
What's the biggest, maybe just as far as sales or band record that you've worked on?
I think total just full-on sales that I've ever worked on probably is still the 2 Jeremy Camp records that I've
Really?
was in you. You hung to make me strong, though my praise was few. When I fall, I bring.
Was it fun working on that strong of a Christian contemporary music record? Or
It was
or not?
interesting.
It's way
I mean,
different, right?
so Jeremy is just the coolest dude. I love Jeremy so much. And I liked the sort of reason that he was working with me. It was kind of like to bring some edge to some of the songs. And that was fun because I wasn't so much that I had to like, I wasn't trying so much to compete with like, you know, the Nashville CCM thing. I was actually trying to bring a different flavor to.
I wonder how many producers are capable of that, because when I look at your discography, I see a lot of records that I love, and then a lot of records that I would never listen to at all.
Yeah, it's kind of, it is kind of funny to think about like that record and then Pedro the Lion Control. on the
Yeah,
same
exactly.
discography.
Ultraviolet rays are washing over all the boys and girls as their moms lay tanning by the pool.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Kind
that's
of.
one of your best credits, I bet, that
Kind
people
of
say.
funny.
'Cause you
People,
mixed
yeah,
Control.
So, David, if you ever hear this, I'm sorry, I'm going to throw you under the bus pretty big time right now. I co-produced and co-engineered and mixed that record. But in those days, people like Dave didn't put those kinds of credits on their record. They
Yeah.
literally just didn't. Like I think it said recorded by or something.
Yeah.
Is all it said
Yeah.
on it. But like he called me one night and like freaking out, like I don't know what to do. I said I would make this record myself, and I'm totally freaking out, and I need your help to do it. So he brought over the drums, and then we made the rest of the record.
No way.
Yeah. So and we did, and it was. I mean, he did so much of it, just with me kind of there in the room to feel comfortable, and like he had someone, and he would do this thing that was so funny. So we had the Arvox plugin, which is this vocal limiter plugin that just has one slider on it of just how much. And he would sneak when I was in the bathroom and pull it all the way down. So it was like maximum compression. Like he would literally try to sneak it past me, and I caught him every time. I would be like, well, that sounds weird. And I'd go in and he'd be like, because he was all about extremes. There's a lot of technical, really funny stories about that record. But.
When you're working on a record like that, can you hear, wow, this is going to be something really special? Because that album is to a lot of people.
Yeah, that is one of those records where I truly believe I couldn't have messed it up in any way. Because the song, and I was sitting there listening to these songs just going, whoa, this is insane. Like, I don't even need to be here. Like, this is, as long as this gets documented, we're all going to be fine, you know? And, you know, when I listen to Control, I don't think about the fact that I worked on it. I just listen to it. And there's only a few records I've ever made that I can just listen to, like, with no memory of even working on it. I
Yeah.
just
Without
can
hearing something you
enjoy
don't
it
like
and
or
just
remember
listen to
doing.
it as a fan. That's one of them, for sure.
You learned along the way that you never fall far from home.
Hey y'all, this is Aaron here, and right now you are listening to Invincible, and that is the opening track on Aaron Sprinkle's newest album, Real Life. So Real Life came out back in March, and it's amazing. It has a ton of guest vocals on it, which I think is very cool. And with Aaron, he's just so well connected and well liked in the music industry that people just line up to come work and collaborate with him. Max Bemis from Say Anything, Sherry Dupree Bemis from Isley, Maddie Mullins from Memphis May Fire, Elle Puckett from Poema, and more. So for the next 2 weeks, you can get a copy of Real Life on vinyl For 35% off at the Tooth and Nail merch store, all you do is use the coupon code LABELED. So head over to toothandnailrecords.merchnow.com and pick up a copy while it's on sale. Again, that coupon code is LABELED, LABELED. Do it.
Now you sow the seeds of a world that you can't control.
All right, so right now you're listening to a track called Died in My Sleep. And it's a track from Demon Hunter's new album. The album's called Outlive. Now, Outlive came out back in March, and it was the number 8 album in the country, and it was also number 25 on the Billboard Top 200. And for the next 2 weeks, you can get a copy of Outlive on vinyl for 35% off in our merch store by using the coupon code LABELED. So head over to solidState.merchnow.com and pick up a copy while it's still on sale. Again, that's coupon code LABELED, and you use that to get Demon Hunter's new album, Outlive, on vinyl for 35% off. SolidState.merchnow.com. So we've literally seen Aaron Sprinkle manage to create his own job for himself at Tooth and Nail and blow up and become one of the top producers in the Christian music industry. Or really, to tell you the truth, he's just one of the top producers in the world. But something was out of balance. He was under more and more pressure, doing bigger and bigger records with bigger and bigger financial responsibilities and ups and downs. And it started to become obvious to those of us that knew him well that Aaron had a drinking problem. And it was starting to negatively affect records that he was working on, his responsibilities, and his marriage. Have you talked about drinking and stuff like that publicly at all?
No, never.
Nobody even knows?
I've never spoken about it in an interview. Recently, I've had listeners of my music pick up on sort of recovery themes in my lyrics and send me messages about it.
Really? Like on your new record?
Yeah, especially my new record, and be like, hey, I'm going through this. I feel like you're talking about this, and then I'll be like, yeah. And I still don't specifically say what I'm in recovery for. And it's not, I'm not ashamed of it or embarrassed. I mean, I'll talk in a room of friends. I'll talk about it all day long. I don't care.
Well, what is it? Why is it hard to talk about though? Like in public or whatever? Like, does it feel like a judgment or something?
Or is it good?
Well, I think out of context, it can be trivialized. I think that's a lot of it for me.
Which would be like what? Like, oh, that guy.
Well, for one thing, if people haven't experienced substance addiction, they usually, I mean, even when I was experiencing it and I didn't know what it was, I had a completely skewed view of even what it was and why it was and all that stuff. And then my journey in recovery, sobriety, whatever you want to call it, has had a lot of facets to it and a lot of shifting movement, like of discovery. And I'm still totally figuring the whole thing out. One of the things I'm personally struggling with too is I will be reminded of things, choices I made, and I cannot literally wrap my head around how I did that.
Really?
Like, I cannot understand how I made that choice. I don't even know how to relate to
like
that
you don't
person.
identify with the person that made that choice
No.
at that time. Can you think of an example?
Well, generally, just choosing isolation and escapism over really like major family stuff with my kids and my wife and stuff. Like, I cannot believe some of the times I did that.
Like you look back on that person as like selfish. Are you mad at that guy or something?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, there's
you feel bad for him?
There's definitely a certain amount of denial and a lot of delusion that happens in those times. But I'm still trying to figure out how to look that guy in the eye and then come to terms with the fact that that guy is me.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to figure that out, and
Yeah.
and be okay with that.
Yeah. Is it scary? Like he might still be in there? Do you ever have those thoughts?
Well, I know he's in there, yes, but I think this just happened yesterday. Karina, my wife, was bringing up a really difficult time that she was going through, where I was totally absent because of my addiction. And my thought when she brought it up was, hey, that's in the past. Why do we have to deal with that? Why do we have to talk about that?
Yeah.
Not, wow, that must have been really hard for you. I didn't think about her at all. And I realized in that moment why I
You want to say, aren't we past that? Yeah.
But the reason is because I haven't dealt with what I did then. So if I were able to move through that, I would be able to just, oh man, that must have been really difficult for you. So now I'm kind of like, because I'm more well than I was then, I think I can start working through looking at that stuff
It seems all interrelated.
and forgiving myself, or whatever you want to call it, so that I can look at my wife and be like, that must have been really difficult for you.
Yeah, for sure. It seems like, I bet during all that times when those kinds of things happen, it was all wrapped up with work too. Because, you know what I mean? Like you would be, for instance, not go home. I remember being in the studio. In fact, I have a pretty interesting vantage point too. I mean,
Oh, I bet. More than almost anyone, probably.
yeah. I don't see you every day anymore, and you seem so healthy. I feel like, I don't get to be around this version. Like, that makes me a little sad that the person you are now is not the person I get to see every day. How tied up was your personal life and your addiction and your work?
Completely like one thing. I mean,
And which is why I think it's important to cover, because
God,
they seem super
I feel like
related.
God allowed me to, for some reason, still make these awesome records and get them done. Part of it was surrounding myself with awesome people like you, and part of it was that doing the records and the production and all that is the easiest thing for me to do. It doesn't really take much effort, and the other things like being a human in a relationship with another human is the hardest thing for me to do. So isolating was a way for me to kind of control my feelings. And the recording studio ended up being my primary source of isolation.
You could shield from not go home and stuff
Yeah,
like
I mean,
that.
if you think about a studio, especially a traditional one, physically, it's really isolating because there's not light really.
It's designed for sound
tell,
isolation.
Can't tell what even time
Yeah.
of day it is outside.
Right.
And my worst drinking was in isolation. That was when things got really bad for me. Was those times where I became addicted to isolation.
See, the night is all I have to make me feel, and all I want is just a love to make it hurt. 'Cause all I need is something fine to make me lose. Now it's a funny way I find myself with you.
But that's what I noticed about the progression of it is there was a time when you were recording and doing really big stuff at a really high level, and I can see now how it would have been your addiction at play, but it was just party time with a lot of people. It wasn't isolated at all.
Oh, totally.
It would
Yeah.
be 25 people at the studio
absolutely.
at 2 in the morning
Oh,
going
absolutely.
insane.
Yep.
Stuff like that would happen, and that seemed really fun.
It was fun in a way. It was really fun, and I mean, absolutely, it was amazing. And there's a lot. I have a lot of great memories around drinking alcohol. I'm not gonna lie about that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's stupid for me to lie about that. But what happened is like, and this is sort of in some people's minds a definition of addiction. What happened is those things started to become not okay, but I kept doing them anyway. And so for me, like hiding it, quote unquote, was a way of continuing it outside of the discoverable view of what's right and wrong.
So it's like you were wanting to drink, and so the acceptable way to do that is have a bunch of people around as a party, which is fine. That way you get to do your activity and whatever.
sometimes I just like, I mean, I love people. I love being around groups of people, and and drink, and they were drinking and I was drinking, and it's fine. It's no big deal. And there's definitely some of that like repressed, church thing too. I mean, I didn't drink until my 21st birthday. It was the first time I ever drank, and I didn't smoke until I was 24 or something. And, within a few years, I was an alcoholic smoking like 2 packs a day. Like, there was like all of this craziness that came out. And it wasn't just me. It was like my entire core group of friends went through this really not all of them became alcoholics or whatever, but kind of partied. Like we never partied in high school.
Were they all Christians? And then
as
soon as they got a little bit of freedom?
All youth group kids, all same church kind of upbringing.
Christian band
and not
types.
even a really conservative church, pretty chill church, really. Yeah, definitely, very cool church.
So you never did drugs or anything, and your core friends didn't really either. So why do you think it was so easy to get addicted, or how did you roll into? Was that your upbringing, your parents, or anything like that?
I think part of my thing is my genetics. To be honest, addiction's really like. It's a rare thing in my bloodline on both sides of my parents to not be an addict. So that's part of it. And then just brain wiring. I think a lot of people that are in the creative kind of, I'm a 4, if you're into that stuff. A lot of those people are very addiction prone. And I don't know how to, feel big feelings, whatever, all that stuff.
Right.
And so I just want to control a way to get away from whatever's happening in my head. I want to be able to have reliable sources of escaping from whatever's happening in my brain.
Yeah. When was the first time? Was the first time you realized you might have a problem? Was it you recognized it, or did somebody else recognize it?
The strongest memory I have is my wife trying to get me to agree to and stick to a certain number of drinks at a function that we were at together. So hey, tonight can you just have 2 drinks? And I'd be like, totally. And then I would make sure she saw me having 2 drinks, and then
2
have
doubles.
8. No, and then I would have 8 others when she wasn't around.
Oh wow!
And even then, I was like, whatever.
She's being
just
so silly.
Like what? I
What's she
didn't
worried
do
about?
anything.
Why's she punishing me?
And it's that thing they say in certain programs when everyone around you is drinking, and you're drinking the same way they are. And then all of a sudden, you're not anymore. All of a sudden, you start veering away from the pack. Things start happening that aren't happening to other people that you're with.
In the world of music, it's so acceptable to just drink whenever.
Oh, yeah.
Creating, recording on the bus, or, it's different than other.
That's every band you grew up watching.
I know.
They were always partying on the bus or in the green room drinking.
So
that's what you do.
Noon was totally fine to open up a
Yeah,
bottle
it's
of
not
Makers
taboo,
in the studio.
In an
most
office,
bands.
it's a little bit taboo, or it's
Yeah.
an old thing they used to do back in the day, but you can't just sit around and drink all day in an office. So it's a tough, I think it's a tough environment.
Yeah, but there's this whole thing where it's just you feel like your life is exceptional, not great, but it is an exception to the rule of normal life. So, for instance, you show up live, and studio's the same way. It's the most special day for a lot of people, and it's your Tuesday. So it's the night we're coming out of the shows. My friends are in town. We're on the bus. We're going to drink whatever. This is the one night of the month they come to party at the Emory show on the bus, and we do it tomorrow night. Right. Or in the studio, it's the same thing. It's a band comes in, and it's like, this is it. We're away from our families. We're in Seattle. We're staying in this cool apartment.
We almost bought a keg for the question. Remember that?
Did we not?
Yeah, I think we did.
We almost bought a keg of Mac and Jacks, but you ended up buying a cheaper keg.
Yeah.
Of something else.
She's a liar. It comes to this. All we had till now is gone, and I'm the other piece to this. Every time I feel this inside, I wanna be the one who caught you to take cover. Never saw it coming, so you put me on again. Had you with no other. The game, the lies,
Yeah, it's just a crazy thing. The whole thing's crazy. So you're experiencing the band's most excited time. They have a lot of downtime. They have money. It's super fun. It's exciting.
Oh, totally. Some bands, they looked forward to that time all year to just do a little bit, of their part, but then just the rest of the time, whatever.
Yeah.
No responsibilities.
Yeah,
whatsoever.
absolutely. There's so many different stories you can cover about that. But, particularly, you said this before, I want to talk about your work, but it's insane the way that you say that producing the records and getting them done was the easy part. And I totally know that to be true. If you were stressed or worried, it was never about a record. It would be about something personal. and stuff like that. And then especially as probably it progressed and you were being more isolated and having problems and stuff. But it even during the times when it was fun and wild, and everybody that's been around you making a record, I'm sure would agree with me that nobody has any clue how you possibly got it done, ever. Like, it just always felt like, well, this is not going to get done. And it always, every single record you ever did, when I was, even the ones I was working with, it was like, this won't get done. This is going to be a huge problem. And every time it turned out better than you could ever imagine.
Right.
And it seemed like you were never there, or you're drinking, or you had a problem at home and had to go home. I'm like, well, this is never going to happen. And I think bands would feel that way. I felt that way when we recorded with you, and they would reflect that to me. And then the records every single time would turn out completely
So
phenomenal.
weird.
I don't even know if they would have been better. That's what I've always wrestled with. Would the records have been any better if you were even more focused or had
don't
less
know.
distraction? And I don't know that they could have been.
Yeah,
Right?
I don't know. That's interesting.
Yeah, why do you think you put stuff off? Like, it comes easy to you, but do you know that? Do you think that's what, like, you go, oh, this is so easy, I'll just
No,
wait
I
till
think
the end and really show out?
I think, okay, so there's a couple things at play there. One of them is I wasn't very good at kind of managing my inspiration, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, now I'm kind for the most part, like, if I'm not feeling inspired, I know just to not even like engage.
Yeah.
Like, because I'm just gonna spin my wheels. And I even got better at even kind of explaining that to bands I was about to work with. Like, look, you might be like, what is going? You're watching YouTube for an hour. What's happening? And I'm actually just waiting to feel something, so we can, because when I'm feeling something, we can move really fast.
It's just unbelievable.
Like, we can just cruise, right?
Right, yeah.
So part of it's that, and then part of it is I would get so frustrated with trying to manage and control and manipulate a group of people that I just wanted that part to be over, and I could be alone, and then I could make the record.
Right.
Then I could make it really awesome. So, and that's not like an ego thing. It's just a fact.
Yeah,
like,
no, that's
it's
totally
just the way I'm
understandable.
wired. And I mean, that's part of why I kind of like the way I'm making records now, is because I'm not in the room with them as much as I used to be. So I get to just sort of work out my stuff without anyone sitting there going, oh, why aren't we doing anything right now?
So, like,
Right.
producing bands would be the best job in the world if it wasn't for the bands. Right?
Well, no, I mean, that is funny and really hilarious. But if it's not that. I mean, I love the bands, and all of my closest friends are in bands I've worked with. But it's just the feeling of when I'm sitting there and I'm trying to get, for instance, especially like before you came along, Matt. Like, if I'm like punching bass, like
You're tuned out.
I am never gonna be there.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna be like, this is not what I signed up for. And it's not that I don't think the bass is important. It's
Right,
not that
right.
it's not that I don't want it to be a certain way. It's just like
It's
but
like it's
so
like your
different
job
now.
as a producer and what you do specifically that I don't know anybody else that's on the level that you are that does it that way. Is it really is the third point of view, the outside point of view of being actual creative input. It's not fixing what's there. It's not anything. It's new inspiration. When it hits, buckle up. This is why you're here. That's why you're there. Because when you have convictions and you know it's what's supposed to happen, you definitively know it and it's right. So, and when it happens, buckle up, because here we go. It's about to, you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah, that's an interesting way to say something that I've kind of come to in the last year or two, is like how deep into the inner circle I'm invited directly will reflect what you get out of me. And it's not because I need to be able to control, it's just because I need to have the freedom to work out any ideas that come along. If I'm sitting there with you and I'm thinking, oh man, it would be so sick if we did this, but then I'm like, well, but they probably wouldn't like that, so I shouldn't even bring it up. That you were already going
Right.
down a road that's not going to be sweet for you. And it's not that I even think that what I'm about to say will change your life or be the best thing. It's just a fit thing. It's just a match thing.
That's my experience with recording with you, because I can remember when we did the question, part of me thought, well, I guess we're going to go with Aaron because Tooth and Nail wants this, and he works for Tooth and Nail, and they'll get more money. Now, at the same time, I go, well, you're revered in our circle. Like, but we knew you before we moved to Seattle.
Yeah.
And you still don't remember, but the first time we met you, we gave you our demo or whatever outside of, what was the...
Out of the Paradox.
Outside the Paradox, the original one.
Like the old one on the Ave?
Yeah,
That's awesome.
It's so funny. Like, I can remember just watching your set, and your sleeves on your sweater were too long, and I was like, how does he handle? Like, it's so funny. I remember that. But the thing about you recording with you is, I just remember all these because I was a real fan. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, I was watching even the clothes you were wearing.
Like, why do you wear a
so
sweater?
Yeah, I was
way?
like
it means something.
Yeah, I thought, wait, if Aaron Sprinkle would wear his sleeves a little bit longer, covering the tops of his hands, maybe I should. But I mean, maybe that would make me better. I literally, I know that sounds funny, but you were that influential to me. But I think that you're exactly right. The thing that I would love people to know is getting to work with you felt like, oh man, another member of the band.
Somebody
like when you talk about YouTube video, like I can remember you go, oh, you got to see this video. We come in and I thought, wait a minute, maybe we should work or something. And I go, wait a minute, maybe not. Aaron makes records. He's made $1 million. So why would I worry? So a little bit gave me a little bit of peace there. I didn't have to think, oh man, my vocal is so important if I don't do it right. Like that. That's probably one of your strong suits. Like I think you really do make people feel relaxed, which is one of the worst things about me. I get super nervous about my vocals, picky, or dumb.
Thank you for reinforcing Toby's impulse to goof off instead of work.
Yeah, you're very welcome. So I think some of that comes from me needing that as well. I need to feel kind of like this isn't really that big of a deal for it to go right. Because that pressure is where I choke. I believe that's where everybody chokes. I remember doing a record where the demo, like the scratch vocal, we couldn't beat it at my house, so we booked a studio. And we're like, maybe this vibe of the studio is gonna do it. So we booked this studio, and this is kind of a bigger band that I've worked with. And we go in, and it was all about like getting that vibe, and still didn't beat it. Like, totally didn't beat it. Like, the scratch vocal is on the record.
The demo-itis got you there.
But also just making a big deal out of it. Like, we gotta do, it's gotta be this, then, and then, and then. And I'm like super rebellious against that feeling. That there's some huge deal ever happening when we're making a record. Like, we just have to make it awesome. Like, just make it awesome. Like, just have fun and make it awesome. And if it sucks, to fix it or get rid of it or whatever.
When your only friends are hotel rooms, hands are distant lullabies. If I couldn't turn around, I would tonight. These roads never seem so long. Central paper hearts stop beating, leaving me suddenly alone. Will daybreak ever come? Who's gonna call on Sunday morning? Who's gonna drive you home? I just want one more chance. Don't put my arms in fragile hands.
What are the Tooth and Nail bands that are the best ones at letting you in? That way you feel safe with that the records came out good.
Well, I think one of the times I ever really realized, wow, this is something that can really make a huge difference, is the Cutlass. I mean, for sure.
Because, what are they like? I don't know.
Well, I was in the band, 100%. Like, just, I co-wrote pretty much every song that I ever did with them. Not because I was trying to, but just because we co-wrote songs together. And up until that record, that first Cutlass record, I hadn't really done a lot of, I'd done a lot of local Seattle stuff. And then, back in the day, like when I was young, like the MXPX thing, I was I don't even really remember that. I have some funny memories of it, and then Anne Berlin, definitely.
They just let you drive.
Well, Anne Berlin, Acceptance, Ivory Line, The Question, definitely. I felt like just sort of like, okay, for this time, we are peers. We are in the same circle. There's not this like thing where if I, bring up a thing or play a thing or do a thing, that there's going to be any issue with it for the most part. And also, all the bands that I work with eventually end up there.
Yeah.
If I work with them over a period of time. They
Yeah,
eventually
that's true.
don't care who plays what guitar part or who writes what vocal thing or whatever. They just want it to be sick.
You
That's
typically
it.
don't tend to become more idealistic
No.
later. And,
Right.
and as a general rule, well, that's
no.
right.
Well, acceptance is the most example for me of that. I mean, they've never done something where I didn't feel completely like part of the band as far as recording goes. And it's, for that reason, it's one of my favorite outlets or, projects to work
Your
on.
Demon Hunter Connections laser beam, that one works really good.
Yeah. Yep.
That one you've had a ton of freedom in. That's a machine. It works.
Well, and that
really well.
that's developed and evolved so awesomely over time. I mean, the last 2 records I just did singing vocal production is all I did on them, because they don't even need me to do. There's no reason for me to do the other stuff anyway. You know what I mean? Like, it's not my speciality.
Save my birthright till I'm feeling up again. When I'm out the door and you get control, then you can take it in. Fine lines, these lights, I'm feeling left for dead. I told you before, you can't help ignore. You wouldn't let me in, but this is real life.
So in doing this podcast, I realized, especially after the Chad Johnson episode, that what we're doing here is actually really poking around pretty deeply into some intimate parts of people's lives sometimes. And I'm starting to get nervous that I might misrepresent or upset somebody in how they're portrayed here. So I started feeling worried about it. So I decided I would give Sprinkle a call and let him know how this episode was turning out and what it covered and make sure he was okay.
Hello.
What's up, Sprinkle? I'm recording this call on Skype, by the way, just so you know. And I wanted to say thank you very much for being okay with us being able to air all this stuff on the podcast that people don't know about you. I appreciate that. And I just wanted to know if you had any thoughts on, to close the episode out, on what really clicked and what changed and when were you able to make this shift to be as healthy as you seem to be right now?
Yeah. So when I had a relapse out here in Tennessee, I really think, when I'm looking back on it, I really think that reality crumbled when I realized how much of my demons were based in a perception I had of myself that was completely outside of the realm of reality. It had nothing to do with what people saw me as or what people wanted to see me as or anything like that. It was just a total construct of, I don't know, guilt and shame and all these things that, were just had been embedded in me over the years, but it was empty. And when I realized how much I was investing in this completely fantasy reality, I felt like I was left with nothing after that. So I kind of had to rebuild. But the exciting and beautiful thing about the rebuilding is I was able to start chipping away at being someone who is who they are, no matter what room they're in and no matter who's in that room with them. And that was something I always envied of people, like that they could be so confident and just be the same person. And, like a lot of things, when God kind of destroys your reality and it's super painful, that's when real growth can happen. That's when actual change can happen, is on the other side of those, catastrophic events.
Man, that's cool. That's super cool to hear. So, it's a cheesy kind of last question, but I have to wrap the episode somehow. I never know how to do it. But can you just tell us real quickly, where are you? How do you feel right now?
Right now, I feel more my true self than I ever have, which is awesome. But I'm able to look at my true self with less embarrassment than I ever have. And that is more important than anything to me, is because I have always been really embarrassed of who I am. So I've always tried to either manipulate how other people saw me or just trying to make it so I can't even see myself. And I'm actually starting to see myself as a worthy, worthwhile creation of God, and to actually start to experience the self-love that is required to love your neighbor as yourself. And that is something I never thought. It's a narrative I always told myself I would never be able to be someone like that. And I would never be able to be someone that is healthy, that felt good in their own skin, that exercised or whatever, all that stuff that I always told myself I could never do. You know, quit drinking, quit smoking, quit vaping, quit all that stuff. I'm doing that, and I believe it's mostly because I'm starting to learn how to not be embarrassed of who I just am right now, period. No matter, with no changes. And, yeah, so that's awesome.
So I want to say thank you to everybody for your support for this podcast. It's been quite successful, way more than we were anticipating. I kind of get it at this point that there's 1,000 more topics to talk about, stories to tell, and conversations to have. So we'll get to it all eventually.
Thanks again for listening. I'm your host and producer of the show, Matt Carter, along with Toby Morrell and Aaron Lunsford. The show is edited by Melanie Studley and Billy Power and mixed by Brett Baird. Thanks to our assistant producers, Reva Hansen and Marshall Freeman, and special thanks to Adam Scatula and Tyson Paletti at Tooth and Nail for helping to develop this show. See you in 2 weeks. Make sure you tell a friend and leave us a review on iTunes.